Hey guys, welcome back to another show here. I'm Ollie and we're with Roger again. We want to first off thank you guys for the feedback that you've given us from the previous show, because it's all been taken on board and we want to use some of the information that came up. We're going to answer some of the questions that came up and we're going to improve the show as we go along. Today's show, we're going to dive into the confusion around diet.
We're going straight in deep, I think.
Yeah,
it's the number one feedback that we've had, the confusion of what are we supposed to be eating?
Exactly. And I think what we mentioned before and what we want to make sure that you guys know is that we're going to talk generally. And this is for the general population, not specifically on the individual. If there are any individual needs that you may need, then by all means give us a shout and we can talk about them on a one-to-one basis. But
yeah.
Roger, what do you see that people need to eat?
I think the key for me is going back to that we need to eat food, real food. It sounds so stupid that it's so basic at that, but I think people they've got totally derailed about what this latest fad, and I think people are losing track of it's food. It's food. What are we designed to eat? What are we designed to drink? I love using the analogy with patients of if they've got a puppy. And we seem to be stricter in sometimes what we would feed our pets than we'd feed ourselves or we'd feed our children. And we live in a modern world. The message I don't think is about that we have to exclude everything. There are temptations, and then someone would argue pro or con, but I think there's still space for some temptations. But I think we are bombarded with fake food. We're bombarded with fads and trends, and I think that's what leads to people to the confusion of what am I supposed to eat? I'm following this trend or this article, and a bit like last week we were talking about, people are getting swayed by media, swayed by different influences, and I think they've lost track, they've lost connection of what we are, what we designed, and what we designed to really as a baseline to be consuming.
And we get confused by the marketing behind it as well, where you go into a supermarket and then they're pumping out fresh bread smells and the aircon as you go in to make you want to have it, and the layout of it, and then even things where psychologically the colours of fast food restaurants of red and things like that have actually been scientifically proven to make you want that food more. And it's a multi-billion pound industry, the food. So what do we actually eat? And as you say, it's important to realise that we're all human beings and we are going to have some temptation around us, and sometimes you do want to just enjoy food and not stress too much about it. But it's that 80-20 rule again, where if you're eating really good food 80% of the time, 20% you can chill a little bit, enjoy some sweets or get some popcorn when you go to the cinema and things.
I think we moved away from a treat as a treat rather than I like the taste of something, so I want to eat what I like all the time. And I think people have lost, or whether it's an educational aspect, or I think it's a lot of media. There's a lot of people are disconnected in that they have lost track of what am I actually supposed to eat. What is healthy protein? What is healthy carbohydrates? What are healthy fats? I think that people lost connection what nutrition is, and what are sound nutritional guidelines, rather than being trained by people want shortcuts, they want quick fixes, and people have lost track of that. And then the marketers, the food technologies, the elements of let's make life simpler and easier have piggybacked that, and so you don't have to worry about all that. We'll take care of that. We just provide you with what you like to eat. Yeah,
and you see in the media as well, where in the 90s it was this low fat phase, then it got into the low carbohydrate high fat phase, and then it got into the paleo, and then there was the gluten-free phase, and then it just goes round in different phases. And then essentially people think, I need to be doing this that's coming up in the media, I need to do that that's coming up in the media, and then they start doing something and then suddenly someone else is doing something different, and there's confusion there. I think with food, the biggest way to simplify it with me is that single ingredient items should form the base of your diet. And
well, they say, don't they, if you go to the supermarket, you ideally go to a fresh fruit section, then the meat, butchery section, if you're eating meat or so, and then get out. There's the rest. Most of the supermarket is filled with food-like items rather than real food.
Yeah, and the more it's processed, okay, your body is still going to digest the calories and things like that, but the more it is processed, the less goodness you're going to get from it. I think that's because people say your body doesn't recognize it as a calorie, and I know it does, but it's more that what is the goodness in this calorie compared to that calorie.
Yeah, and that not all calories are the same, and that actually we don't. If you eat 200 calories, you're going to process 200 calories different to me. So
yeah.
the calorie count is really a poor indicator. It gives us a baseline, but it's a poor indicator of how much energy you're actually using. But calories from sugar and calories from protein are going to be utilized in different ways. So they're not like for like. So there's so many different indicators, and people get confused of I'm calorie counting, but then they lose track that. Therefore, if I drink diet drinks, there's no calories, so that's got to be good because they're focused only on a calorie count. So I think what we want to do is try and strip bare some of the confusion and go back to basics. So what for you would be generally a basic diet recommendation?
I would look to have protein at your meals and have a base level of protein just to make sure that you're getting your needs in.
Okay.
Have a fistful of carbohydrates and a thumbful of fats, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, what are those? Now, you're going to get your proteins from...
So let's break them down. Let's make it simple one-on-one, and because there's so much layers to it all. So basic protein choices.
Steak, chicken breast, turkey breast. You can get your lean proteins in, then you can go down ones which slightly cross over that. Eggs and salmon are going to have your fats in as well as your protein.
And then you've also got some proteins which you do get from non-meat sources.
Yeah.
And we can touch on vegetarianism in a moment, but those are your general things. Then your good options for fats is number one, don't shy away from fats.
Yeah.
Fats are good, but again, you've got your better fats, and then you've got really your what I regard as your essential fats.
I think
you're looking at your avocados, which have taken a beating, but
yeah,
there's avocados should be really, really one of the first things you're going to go and buy from the supermarket, as far as I'm concerned.
There is that, but then if someone's really high in copper and they're suffering from some depression and anxiety levels and stuff like that, that could be, again, you're not going to know this unless you have a test.
Yeah.
But it could be that then we're looking what foods are high in copper, and avocados are quite high in copper, but it depends on the individual.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is the baseline.
The baseline.
So the concept of that there's good fats and there's not so good fats.
But also, as you said about eating fat for diet, we need to establish the difference between his dietary fat and his body fat, which is like lipids, or lipids, whatever you want to call it. It's the stuff that is around your organs, your visceral fat, the stuff that is on your body.
Yeah.
And there is a differentiation that the dietary fats get the bad reputation because they are named the same thing as fat that's around your body.
So we can come back to that because I've got an interesting thing with meat.
Yeah.
And so then you've got so your fats we identify there's a place the no fat diet just doesn't really make sense as far as
it helps with hormonal production.
The true no fat as opposed to selective good fats, and then carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Carbs are the thing at the
moment. They make the world a better place.
Well, carbs are you've got the low carb, the no carb, the high carb.
Ketogenic.
I think there's got to be carbs in the diet. We know, but the interesting thing when people think carbs, they forget that vegetables have carbohydrates in. They forget that. So when someone says, "I'm not having bread or pasta," they go, "Oh, you're on the no carb diet," and it's like, no, they're loading themselves up with vegetables. And if they're doing vegetables and healthy fats and they've got some meat, they've still got carbohydrates in their diet. It's very hard to actually be no carb.
Yeah, and also there's the differentiation between starchy carbs and then your green leafy veg, your fibrous carbs. And the difference in the body with fibre, again, like going into that, you've got soluble fibre, you've got insoluble fibre, and then
so we can see the confusion.
Yeah, let's eat. Like we can get confused just talking about it.
Of course.
Like we've just opened the can of worms simply by saying, how do we declutter it and decode it?
Yeah. But I think that's the key, is to go back to the basics. Now, obviously, if someone's got a specific condition, you would hope that they're looking to then link up with someone like yourself or who's working more on the ins and outs of your individual thing. So what we're looking at here is just a generalized overview what I'm trying to get at the concept is that in all these, what we call the macronutrients, all of them, there are good and bad options, or less favorable and favorable options. And I think lots of people confuse is that there must be like, saturated fat is bad. It could be, if that's a big part of your diet and you're not getting some of the other essential fats, or you can get more technical with where's the fat coming from. You're looking then in meat production. So we're going back to meats. The reason being because I read a great article, which I don't know if you've noticed, is that we grow up in South Africa with a braai, or in UK terms a barbecue, and it's meat. We have good quality meat. It's generally readily available at a good price. We grew up with is that you wanted lean meat, so you'd have your piece of rump steak with really very little intramuscular fat, marbling, and you'd have the fat on the outside. And if you were conscious, you would cut some of that fat off in the old no fat. But the meat itself, the fiber, was really lean. Now, marbling has become really top because it's like as you cook your meat, the marbling, the intracellular, intramuscular fat melts and it provides juices in that. And so I was interested in this, and then so I found some research which actually studied the difference between the fats, and I was quite surprised because it suggested that the fats in the marbling in that carried more nutrient benefit than the external fat. So the fat on the outside of the muscle
makes sense.
It does when you stop and look and read into it. But when you look at it, you kind of go, there's more fat in that out. So if you're like a no fat, cut off, I don't want any fat, you would stay away from meat. But meat carries all the minerals, it carries, the saturated, there is actually goodness in that fat. And then if you go grass-fed and you're going more organic and you can get more and more technical. So it's really quite interesting when each of those macronutrients, and you look into them and look more into the science behind it, you see that why there's actually benefit for each of one of them. But then you go into the supermarket and you bombarded with advertising and media and that, and you get pulled away from that. If you're not shopping and looking at your food with a little bit more present mindedness, you lose that.
Yeah, and also with the meat, the funny thing you say with the steaks and stuff like that is that we want a nice red steak, but the fresher it is, the bluer it is. People think it looks all the greyish sort of colouring on it, and it goes in there and needs to be looking that way, and you think, hang on, it looks horrible and gone off, but it's actually fresher when it's bluer and greyer, which is...
And it's all things are presented and things are made more attractive, because at the end of the day, they're there to sell food that tastes nice, that you want to come back for more. Where did you get that food? I got it from so I'm going back. It's about creating that repeat business. There is a monetary element to it.
And they're coming up with a lot of things when we talk about meat, and you said about touching on the vegetarian side of things, they're coming up with a lot of processing to actually replicate meat. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's not full replicated amino acid profile. So the broken down strands of protein and amino acid, there's not the full range in these products they've created. So then you have to get the other foods in there.
So do you want to get controversial?
Go for it. I like a bit of controversy.
What are your thoughts on vegetarianism as far as the idea of not eating meat?
I personally wouldn't ever be a vegetarian.
Yeah, that's a personal choice. What about from a health perspective?
It can work with the right supplementation in there. Well, we spoke about supplements a lot last week. That it can work if we're getting the right B vitamins in there, and other nutrients in that are going to be potentially deficient, and the absorption of nutrients. It can work, but we mentioned about Chris Kresser earlier, and a guy who's very good on the podcast and very knowledgeable, and on his show it made me laugh, and I think I brought this up to you before, is that we talk about, or vegetarians talk about, the feelings of the animal, and this probably will, apologies if you're vegetarian, but the feelings of this animal, this cow's life, the chicken's life, the pig's life, and you're eating more vegetables. Now, what happens in that combine harvester when it's harvesting all the crops, and you're getting those lettuces, you're getting the corn and everything from the fields, and there's a little field mouse there who's running back to its nest.
Yeah.
And he gets his head chopped off and leaves people in the nest.
I do think that the way we look after the animals is important, and the way we
I think we have to respect them.
we have to, and there is also that element of how they are farmed, for better word, how they are looked after, and how that is processed. I think is very important, and the industrialized aspect of we need more food and we need to produce more is creating this industrialization product where they then also fed artificially, they pump with hormones. I don't like that. I think we can eat less meat but better quality meat and be very healthy. I don't think we need to be eating more meat and produce more poor quality meat.
Yeah, and as I said about getting the protein as a base, I still think generally coming from a world in fitness, a lot of people overeat protein. We don't need as much as we say.
And also that in the vegetarian defense is that you can get your protein from non-meat sources. You just got to work really hard at it and be very
you have to be really anal about your diet.
So I do think that if from a moral perspective, if someone is pro-vegetarian, but I think they have to be very aware because there is the challenges which come with it. But I think we probably rely too much on meat, and we could be vegetarians for a few days of the week quite happily.
There's a guy called Matt Fitzgerald who I spoke to on my podcast with, talking about endurance athletes, and I noticed it when I worked with Luke in the Tour de France as well, that they vary their diet. So when people had this article saying Chris Froome is going low carb, no, he goes low carb on days where he doesn't need as many carbs, but they also have days when they'll have very low or zero meat, and they basically will literally cycle every diet, and it works.
The paleo movement tends to talk about meats and all that, but the ancestral diet
every day.
They didn't. They ate very little meat. They were mainly more vegetarians and occasionally were carnivores.
Yeah.
They didn't have that plate of all sorts. They ate what was available at that time.
And I think genetics come into it, because this is completely going on. Like, I've never met one, but is it the Inuits that are like in Alaska and stuff? They have basically high fat, meat only, protein and fat diet, and like zero carbs, zero vegetables, and they're one of the healthiest.
But they're interesting. They get a lot of their vitamins through the fat.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're eating also a healthy animal.
Yeah,
who's organic and natural.
They might eat a seal, which is
not a highly processed
high
seal.
fat. Yeah, it's
not a seal bar.
That's not grass fed though. Yeah, so we've digressed.
So I don't want to get too controversial with vegetarians. I'm not bashing vegetarianism. What I'm really highlighting is that meat plays a vital role, and I think the next wave, you touched on last week, the next wave is going to be meat bashing, and saying that that there's this controversy of fat or no fat. And that's been pushed. Sugar is top thing, and we've had carb. So I think meat is coming next because of the welfare of animals. And I think the message for me is we can look after animals. We can, but we don't. We're not under pressure to feed the world. We've got enough food. We need to eat more sustainably, and I think meat can play certainly a good role. It gives very good nutrients. But I don't think we need to rely on it as much as we can. So I'm not vegetarian, and I don't feel that for me being a vegetarian is my healthiest option. But I do think that I like meat, and probably like many people, I think could quite easily be vegetarian a few more days in the week.
I think as well, when you look at vegetarians and vegans especially, if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegan, and you keep getting ill, then there's something going on in your diet. And there is some nutrient deficiency, there is maybe higher stress levels, some digestive issues and things which
you've got to be a switched on vegetarian.
Yeah, you need to know your stuff, and I know a few vegetarians and that are really switched on and really healthy. Yeah. And one of the guys you
can eat chips and cheese and be a vegetarian.
Yeah, I worked with a guy, Iñaki de la Peña. It was a couple of years ago in the Ultraman World Championships, and we were thinking he'd come second or third, and he won the World Championships, which is like a 3-day triathlon, and he was full vegetarian. And you think he can get very high in performance with that. Now, would I switch to vegetarian if they said to me that, and there were studies shown, which were funded by the right people, that said this is lab created meat and it's got all the nutritional quality that this steak has? I'm pretty sure I would,
Yeah.
provided it didn't cost like £50 a gram. It would be something which I would eventually switch to. The farming methods and the technology are getting better like that, but yeah, the welfare of the animal does mean a lot.
Yeah. So what would be the baseline for someone who's looking to improve their diet?
I would say first off, understand what you're currently eating. So get something like a fitness tracker, like MyFitnessPal or something like that, a nutrition tracker, and just make a food diary.
Yeah.
Track your food for a week so you know roughly what you're eating without kind of fixing it, without adjusting things, so you know this is what I would eat on an average day. And weigh yourself at the start, weigh yourself at the end. You then know what your average calories have been through the week, and then you know if you're putting on weight, if you're dropping weight, if you're staying the same, so you roughly know what your calorie needs are. And then from there, take it as a step-by-step thing, because a lot of people, when say, how do we sort the diet out, is that they want to go from here, they want to go from A to Z without going B, C, D,
It's got to
E,
be.
F.
It's got to be a journey. It's got to be of discovery. You've got to sometimes find that I've eaten this and I don't feel that great. I find this and I sleep better. I do this or I eat at different time. You've got to really start to connect back to who you are, what you are. So you get to understand how you work and what the basic foods is. And I would tend to say is encourage people to, you're only going to know that when you go back to eat real whole food.
Yeah.
So my viewpoint for people is say, go back and try and understand you as an animal, what do you normally design to eat? So I think what we're going to look to do is encourage to get some feedback.
Yes.
What do you find that works? What do you do? Do you focus a lot on different diets? Have you tried loads of diets? Do you find that going back to basics? Have you discovered different things? And we'd love to know what your feedback is and how you feel diet confuses you, or have you got it sussed? Have you gone through that process? And we'd love to know and get some feedback. And if there's other things within diet and food that confuse you, then let us know. And we'd be happy to get back to you or do another debate and go from there.
100%.
All right, until next time, we'll have another exciting debate and next week, and we'll try and stay a little bit more on one topic, but it's very hard. It's so
when you're
confusing.
passionate about a subject, it's hard to stay on point because you want to get in deeper and deeper, but we want to make sure that if some of the stuff we say is a little bit where, hang on, these guys are geeking out a little bit too much as such, then just tell us and we'll rein it back a little bit into a different level.
Tell us what you want to hear.
Yep.
Right, till next time, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you then.
Take care.